Good evening. I'm Brewster T. Koopa. Many of you know me as that weirdo from the Garage Mod Workshop who makes all those crappy model boards. As part of my 1,000 subscriber special, I've decided to show you how the Runaway 8 became into fruition. From the backstory to development process. Sit back and enjoy how the Runaway 8 became into reality. So to start off, we're going to explain how this all went down. First, let me take you back to January of 2021. It started off as a weird dream I had where it was my birthday despite the fact I was born in December. I dreamt I was on a school bus and given 8 capsules. These of course would become the Runaway 8. However, it did not start there. The following day I decided to make models of Shrouder, Squeevy, and Ivan out of boredom. Didn't make the rest because I wasn't invested in the concept as I am now. Fast forward to February. I'm working on the Adventures of Brewster's Episode 3. Now, me and my infinite wisdom would use the 15AI website to voice my characters that I don't voice. Roll around to February 20th or so, 15AI goes down and I didn't finish episode 3 in time. Why didn't I write down the other lines and simply save them? Or why did I use text-to-speech at all? Because I'm a dumbass. You may bully me in the comments for my very unwise decisions. So I'm stumped. I'm left with nothing to do, nothing to develop, and otherwise just completely bored. So, I decided to simply make models of Rodney and Robo-Ed, just for the hell of it, and I saved them to, well, what you're going to see later on. But, that aside, I finished playing Little Nightmares 2 at the time, and I had recently watched the movie Coraline around that time as well. So, it brought something to me. I remember there's a trope I like. I don't know exactly how to describe it, other than I call it the hero kids in a monstrous world full of adults kind of thing. Judgmental monsters, monsters that eat people or children, you get the idea. That kind of thing. So, both franchises obviously heavily inspired the Runaway 8. I remember my friend Lolatak telling me about Casting Call Club as well. I decided to get to work making the Runaway 8 a reality. So I began work on the other models, refined a few things, and thus the Runaway 8 was born. With the concept of the Runaway 8 in mind, it was high time I started getting to work. So, instead of immediately hiring people, I decided to create the assets first. Now, you think the Runaway 8 themselves would be the main assets, but in reality, the very first asset created for the Runaway 8 was the Truant Officer. He was created with the idea in mind I wanted to try something new. What would that be? Giving the models more details and ditching my old style of looking like flat, cartoony textures. I got Substance Painter and decided to get to work making the models look amazing. When I created the Truant Officer, I had one special thing in mind. It's that every villain has to represent some sort of fear or phobia. For example, the Truant Officer represents the boogeyman, the fear of the dark, and the fear of being taken. Characters like DJ and Boom Boss represent the fear of phonophobia, the fear of sound. Even if he's not too scary to begin with. You get the idea. Not every character has to represent some sort of phobia, but they have to represent some sort of fear. So after designing all the main assets, I went to Casting Call and began hiring my entire team. Mostly of voice actors at the time. Eventually I went on to hire composers, I went on to hire an artist, you get the idea. With all that being said, let's move on to something else. As previously mentioned, the Runaway 8 started off as a dream and I made models for the characters up until the Truant Officer became the first asset. However, they were not called the Runaway 8. Instead, they were simply referred as the Outcasts, a group of kids who ran away from their respective homes. In the dream, each character was drastically different to who they are now. Robo Natasha was peppy, perky, and free-spirited. She also resembled a mixture of Diva from Overwatch and her current design. Which is bizarre because I don't even play Overwatch. When her model was made, she went through 3 major changes. First, she looked like this. Then she looked like this. And then this. That was her final design. Rodney looked more like the character Jeff from the game Earthbound, but with curly brown hair and a somewhat taller design. When his model was made, he was simply given a school uniform and his skin was erroneously colored green. Which I did not pick up on until it was almost too late. Ivan originally had no eyelids and had more of a veiny, eerie-looking eye. He was also much more intelligent and less self-aware than his current self. Sparks was drastically different in both design and personality. Originally, she looked like this, her shark-toothed self with a shark-toothed snout to match, but this design was later changed. However, in the dream, she resembled a 6-foot lanky version of one of my other characters known as Electric Riley. She was changed to a superhuman because of this reason. Shrouder looked like his current design now, though he was much more of a pure, gassy-looking mist, with a cosmic body similar to that of Bouldergeist from the game Super Mario Galaxy. Though since you cannot replicate dynamic textures in the source engine, as the old saying goes, make do with what you got. His original model also lacked arms. Screamy was originally a slimy Among Us crewmate, though he had arms instead of tentacles, and of course he had the hands to match. Instead, I opted to change his appearance to the TV-shaped humanoid slime. His personality was roughly the same. In the dream, he did the same thing as you see in the intro, just slowly turning to me, for no reason other than to be creepy. Going back to mention the game Overwatch, Rocky looked like a buff version of the character Lucio. He also lacked all the technology Lucio had. Aside from that, he looked like just the way he does now, minus the face tattoo. Pompey, like Sparks, was drastically different, though not by much. She was a white version of a moth denizen I made for the Adventures of Brewster, which is also a model that got reworked into a later model. She was fluffy, and instead of having pink butterfly wings, she had long green moth wings. Personality-wise, instead of being a free-spirited hippie, she was much more aloof and somewhat hostile. Her original model also had bushy eyebrows. Before we move on to the main villains, here are a few screenshots of what the characters originally looked like, way before they were completely developed into the series. When I was designing the villains, they all came from some sort of representation, as I previously mentioned. Starting off with the first true asset of the Runaway 8, the Truant Officer. He wasn't much different, aside from the fact that he had one simple change. He went from having a spherical black head to his much more slightly shorter, defined head with a gas mask. Part of the Truant Officer's physical appearance, humorously enough, came from a character known as the Shadow Man, which is actually a character named Chaz Finster from the show Rugrats, wearing a gardening suit. The Ice Cream Man was designed to be the phobia of cryophobia, the fear of ice and other cold things. Originally, his wires were shorter and he lacked ice abilities. What gave him his name was the fact that he was an ice cream man who tricked children and kidnapped them. He represented abduction. This concept was quickly dropped simply because the antagonists all captured children, and thus would be redundant. The main antagonist of Episode 1, DJ and Boom Boss, was originally an unused concept, but as someone who hates having things unused, he was later reworked into what he is now. Boom Boss was originally known as Glam Rocker. As the alias implies, he was going to be a glam rock star instead of a disc jockey. But I originally scrapped this concept simply because I thought it was too far-fetched as a concept. Instead, he was reworked into his disc jockey, and the name Boom Boss came from Lolitech, who suggested it. Mr. Smiles' model was changed relatively different. He originally had a science suit, different hairstyle, and was a lot more taller, instead opting for his new design. Lastly, the snark from I've Been Short, Mr. Squiggles, was originally going to remain as the Runaway 8's pet, but was ultimately scrapped and instead killed off due to keeping him of the dynamic of the 8 only. That and I wanted all assets otherwise to be completely original. Here are a few other miscellaneous changes. When I was originally creating the pilot shorts as well, I wanted to go for a show don't tell kind of thing. While the concept was obviously dropped, raw footage of Robo-N's original short still exists, and you can see it in its crappy quality as well. Yeah, pretty garbage, huh? Trust me, I regretted all this. But that's not all I got. I also have the original intro to the series, which was also scrapped in favor of what we have now. Do you imagine what it would have been like if that was the final? Ugh. And there you have it. The creation of the Runaway 8 and its development. We hope you enjoyed our little show tonight. Ciao, my friends.